I think it's important that if I talk about this HD remaster, I bring up the most obvious change, which is somewhat controversial, the game's soundtrack. As some of you may or may not be aware of, the HD remaster has a newly created soundtrack for the game. This is because a few years ago the composer Mamoru Samuragochi was doubted to be legitimately deaf, and later admitted to the fact that he actually was not deaf. The following year, his ghostwriter Takashi Nagaki stepped forward to shed some light on Samuragochi. So if you're wondering as to how Samuragochi went from making, and I say making very loosely, making the Resident Evil Director's Cut DualShock version of the soundtrack to Onimusha's soundtrack, well, now you have some context as to why and how that happened. It's a shame too because the original soundtrack is fantastic. Now that's not to downplay the new soundtrack, but I do think that it's worth mentioning. So if you hadn't kept up with that bit of news, at least now you have that context before we get into talking about